And welcome to the morning meeting where 2 out of 3 of us have shaved today. Grateful for you to join on this important day. We're going to run through the day book and then we're going to have a spirited conversation. I'm going to clarify 2 things I said yesterday that people put misleading headlines over. And so hopefully that'll make some people happy and others less happy. Appreciate you joining. If you're watching on YouTube, we're delighted to have you here, a growing audience on YouTube, which we're very grateful for. Today, Two-Way's actually announcing itself. We've been in the softest launch ever, as soft as a Twinkie, as soft as a fresh New York hot pretzel from a cart. But today we're announcing it. You'll see in the chat, if you're on either platform, you'll see in the chat the link to the press release announcing Two-Way. Two-Way has been a platform primarily about political and government conversations. The intention all along has been to expand to sports, music, entertainment, personal finance, parenting, childhood diseases. We're going to do all those things in 2024. So if you're interested in reading about Two-Way, check out the press release. It'll be in my Substack later, and I'll tweet it out as well after the program. If you're on YouTube, as always, peace, love, and understanding. If you're in the chat, keep your trash talks for other places. This is a place to learn and understand. No personal insults. If you're here on the Two-Way platform, we're delighted to have you, and we'd love for you to participate. Lots of new people this week already. We're super excited about that. As always, we love our returning folks as well. Try to get a nice mix in, including a nice mix of people from both sides. Whether you're supporting Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, or still undecided, we welcome your participation. If you'd like to be involved, please raise your hand. We'll get to as many of you as we can when we get to the conversation portion of this episode. All right, today, Vice President said nothing on her schedule until 1:25. She flies to Philly, and she participates in Chester Township Town Hall, moderated by CNN, and we're going to talk about that. Donald Trump has 2 events today in Georgia. One in, how do you pronounce this, guys? Zebulon? I confess I don't know. 3 p.m. Is a Believers in Ballots Faith Town Hall with the Lieutenant Governor of Georgia. And then tonight, 7 p.m. in Duluth, Georgia, Turning Point Action Rally. I think RFK is going to be there. I read in Axios that Tucker's going to be there. And I'm sure those will both be streaming on this YouTube platform, which has a lot of live video. Tim Walz starts in St. Paul. An interview he did with Univision airs. Oh, the interview with the vice president that she taped yesterday that's been translated into Spanish airs tonight as well. Forgot to mention that. His interview with Univision Radio's El Bueno, La Mala y El Feo. That's my Spanish, folks. 9:20 a.m. that airs. I think that's pre-taped. I don't know, but it airs at 9:20. And then tonight, he's in Louisville, Kentucky for reasons still not adequately explained, except I'm sure he's raising money. Campaign reception, 5:30. J.D. Vance, 2 events in the Silver State this day. One is in Vegas at 11:12, 1 Eastern time, and one in Reno. Those are what you call your 2 major media markets in the state. What time is that? That is at 4:30 Eastern time. Doug Emhoff campaigning in Florida, Bill Clinton campaigning in Phoenix. All right. I want to clarify 2 things that I said yesterday. I said them precisely, but on TV and the internet, people put headlines, newspapers, headlines of what I said. First, it's more simple, and you guys can weigh in if you want. Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic just happened to publish a story 2 weeks before the election with accusations against Donald Trump, some of which have been disputed for the first time, some of which have been disputed for quite some time. And the point I was making is there's all sorts of things being floated out there. Maybe Jeffrey Goldberg just happened to finish the story 2 weeks before the election. I'm sure Sean will have a point of view about that. I know of one story that's been pitched to a major newspaper and to me, and for all I know, to many others, that I don't believe is true. But if it's true, as I said yesterday, it would end Donald Trump's campaign. Just as if the accusations now thoroughly debunked and attributed by American intelligence to Russia about Tim Walz, if those were true, it would end his campaign. What we're seeing in the final days, is a point I was making, is actors who want a certain outcome are on social media and in pitches to reporters, and in the case of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg writing himself, are trying to affect the end of the race because they're so desperate to try to pull a Comey. I'm not pursuing the story. I don't think it's true. People in Mar-a-Lago, calm down. All I'm saying is there are people out there pitching stuff. And if it were true, it would end his campaign. But if someone pitched me a story that said Trump is a Martian, that might not end his campaign. People might think that's cool. You get my point. There's stuff like that. So before we move on to early voting, Sean, what would you like to say about this phenomena on both sides of stories being pitched at the end, plagiarism, etc., to try to influence the outcome?
Well, I mean, I would just say post-Steele dossier, post-Hunter Biden laptop, I would hope, considering the direction that it all seems to go for the most part, I would just hope that any responsible person who used to call themselves a journalist would actually have the same thoughtful demeanor that you do, which is to be more responsible before they publish.
I will say, before the Tim Walz story was debunked, with the accusations of a former student at his school, not his student, before that was debunked, I heard from 6 senior Republicans, including 3 associated with the Trump campaign, asking me if it were true. So my point is the campaigns are paying attention to this stuff, and they're thinking, well, maybe it's true. And I know that the Harris campaign thinks some of these Trump accusations are true. They're not just cynically using them. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, to some extent, this is as old as the Republic itself, which is
correct.
Campaigns, operatives, leak, try to create stories. It's kind of like the old, like, it's on you to prove the theory's wrong. The difference now is with the internet, everyone's a journalist. And it's a great way to, try to push something out into the ether. And so I think the best thing you can do is, Mark, just as you're doing now, is you try to use your best judgment, and reporters will maybe dig a little bit. And if there's nothing there, they'll move on.
Yeah. All right. Let's wade into something that's hugely complicated and related and I struggle with. Okay. I know General Kelly a little bit. I've met him a couple times. I know President Trump a little bit. I've known him, off and on, whatever. I find this to be something that really triggers people on both sides. I find that the Reds feel indignant that once again Jeffrey Goldberg and the New York Times are promoting General Kelly's accusations. You can't prove a negative. You can have 13 Trump people say, I never heard him praise Hitler. And that doesn't mean he didn't, in a private conversation with General Kelly, praise Hitler, or more than once. There's no way people can be sure that General Kelly's not telling the truth. I don't like to believe that General Kelly's lying, and I don't like to believe that Donald Trump's lying. And I know on the blue side, the perception is Donald Trump is a chronic, habitual, promiscuous liar. And why would General Kelly lie? And I can tell you, I don't want to choose a side in this. I don't feel I can, not just because I need to be an impartial journalist. I find it hard to believe that either of them's lying. Okay? So when I read once again General Kelly on a press tour, 2 weeks to go, the Blues say he's a patriot. He sees Trump might win. He feels obligated to speak out. The Reds say, once again, the guy, for whatever reason, is making up stories that don't accord with their connection to Donald Trump. Donald Trump says a lot of outrageous things. Sean, have you ever heard Donald Trump praise Hitler, or could you imagine him doing such a thing?
No, I have not. I do think, and
could you imagine him doing such a thing?
Well, and this is what I was going to say. And this is one where, like, I feel like after the way we started this with how your comments got taken out of context, I have a rule about rape, Hitler, and anytime you discuss any of those things, you usually end up in a bad place. And so I don't, and I'm being serious.
I'm sorry. I understand what you're saying, but you're not making a metaphor with Hitler. We're talking about something very specific.
But what I'm saying is, and this is why what I'm being careful of is just what I can see is a conversation where, like, you can say somebody's done like that guy did had strong people around him. It doesn't mean that you like them. It means that you're commenting.
No one we know, literally no one we know, would say, well, Hitler had his problems, but he didn't know how to pick them. No one would say that. And I don't believe Donald. I don't believe. I don't.
I guess my point is,
Donald Trump would say it. I don't believe Donald Trump would say it.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, or what I'm responding to is, you're asking me, is there any context? And the only context to which I could see a discussion occurring is with people explaining.
But don't be hypothetical, Sean. You know Donald Trump.
Right? No. And the answer I gave you was unequivocal, which is
you never heard him say it. But if someone said to me, would Sean Spicer, and I don't know you as well as you know Donald Trump, if someone said to me, would Sean Spicer ever say Hitler knew how to pick him? I would say no. He wouldn't even say it jokingly. As I said, I don't believe Donald Trump said it. I also, these are not compatible positions. I don't believe that General Kelly would lie. But
yeah, and the
they
thing
both
that's
can't be
weird to
true.
me is that Trump knows that everybody's parsing his words. I mean, when I've been in rooms with him, he'll say something like, I'm not going to get into that because everybody will say I said something. And so he understands being in a room where people leak and say stuff. So that's even more to the point of there are times when he might make a joke about something, but I've never heard him say something where I'm walking out going, dude, that was way offensive. Like he'll comment or he'll stop short and say, man, we're going to get in trouble if we continue.
Right. Okay. So
knows,
one more question to you, and then Dan. You worked with General Kelly. Is he lying? It's not something you misremember.
No, so just to be clear, my relationship with General Kelly, he was Secretary of Homeland Security while I was there. He was named Chief of Staff on my way out. I know I dealt with him. I can't say I know him. I don't think a guy who is a 4-star Marine that led SOUTHCOM is somebody that I would say is a liar. Generally,
right. So even though you're for Donald Trump and you have a relationship with him, you have the same position I do. It's irreconcilable. You can't imagine Trump said it, but you can't imagine Kelly would lie. Correct?
Yeah, which leads me to believe that there's something in the middle where he made a comment that is, well, you're shaking your head.
There's no in the middle for Hitler. There's no in the middle with Hitler.
I get it. And but my point is that you're at, how do we square a circle? And my answer is I'm trying to find that way, which is how does somebody walk out of a room saying somebody said something and someone else saying, I didn't say it?
Do you know how I square the circle? I say it can't be squared. Dan, you with Kelly, you with Trump, or you with me and Sean?
I'm with General Kelly. I can't imagine he said stuff. As you said, Mark, this is what spins the left up to no end. I have family members who have sent me the Kelly story this morning and want me to spend the entire 30 minutes interrupting you and Sean and just speaking about this and why Trump, should never be elected. To some extent, I don't think this is new news in that Trump says outrageous stuff. I mean, he does. And I think that the bigger issue is the number of people who work for Trump who speak out against him. It's unprecedented in modern politics in either party, really for any major office, governor, senator, where so many people speak out horrifyingly. To me, that is, the better kind of macro conversation. But as both Sean and you have said, anytime Hitler is in the news, it is not good for that.
All right, last thing I'll say, my daily reminder, please consider your candidates losing and how you're going to handle that. Okay. I know that there are people listening to this who say Trump is a pig and he loves Hitler. And how could anybody vote for Trump? And how could Mark Halperin say he doesn't believe Trump said it? I know there are people like that. And I know there are people who are saying Kelly's lying. He's in a collusion with the New York Times and Jeffrey Goldberg. This is all just made up as a last desperate attempt to stop Trump. I don't know what the answer is. I do know that I'd like those of you who think Kelly is lying to consider that he's not. And for those of you who think Trump said it, to consider maybe he didn't. Okay? Just consider it, because there are tens of thousands, tens of millions of people in America who don't agree with you about this issue. Okay? All right. Early vote. I didn't say Trump was going to win. I didn't say I want Trump to win. I didn't say that we'll definitely know on election day who's going to win before the voting starts. I didn't say that the early vote is inexorably going to continue the way it is. What I did say is that if it continues the way it is, along certain dimensions, which I'll list in a moment, on election day, it'll be clear that Trump's going to win, because the Democrats will not be able to make up on election day the current small lead that Democrats have in most of the battleground states on the early vote. Okay. Sean has raised this. Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. I'm sorry, I got to find it somewhere. I'm going to get out my soapbox for a second.
Yeah.
Because I got asked more about your comments yesterday than any time that since we've done this. And I literally was like, I'm on the program. I didn't hear Mark say that. Let me go back and watch this. And why I think this is sort of what Barack Obama would call a teachable moment is I think for everyone who watches this, just to understand it, you all were part of this. Listening to Mark, I literally was going, I was there. He didn't say that. Let me go back. Maybe I missed something, or, was scrolling or responding to a comment. But this is what goes on in the media. And I just want people to understand that, where there are days, and I dealt with it my entire career, where I'd be like, that's not what I said. Or they're taking that out of context and people go, yeah, whatever. You're a horrible person. I know you said that or you meant it. And I think that, like, we all were part of this conversation yesterday. We heard what Mark said. It was very clear, and people will take things, and this is how narratives go. Now, in this case, it's not hurtful. Like, Mark might have to do some cleanup, and we had phone calls, but when people take things that other people say and said they said X, this is where I think a lot of the problem is with our media.
Yes.
So
this program and this platform assumes a lot more knowledge on the part of the audience than most content. That's just our style. And sometimes, and Sean's very good at this, sometimes we need to be a little bit more remedial. There's a difference between politics and campaigns. And one of the biggest weaknesses in political journalism is most political reporters don't know a thing about how campaigns work. It's very idiosyncratic. It's a lot of nuts and bolts, but Dan knows a lot about how fundraising works. Most political reporters have no idea really how you get money in the bank. Okay, so understanding early vote, particularly with all the changes since COVID, is a really labor-intensive thing. If you read, and I don't mean to single out any particular reporters for disrespect, but they're representative. If you read this news cycle, New York Times or Wall Street Journal or Washington Post story about the early vote, they are so surface. They are just stringing together quotes from academics and consultants about what they think. There's no rigorous attempt to figure out what's actually going on, because it's really hard. And it involves, again, not knowing about politics, but knowing about campaigns. So what's going on, as far as I understand it, and I'll say again, I believe I said yesterday, my view is informed by people who do know a lot about campaigns, Democrats, Republicans, and independent analysts. And my independent analysts are fantastic because they spend a lot of time with me explaining things. They see the data, and they don't have a dog in the hunt, okay? If the data stays the way it is, and as I said every time on every platform yesterday, if, okay, if it stays, it's going to be clear that Trump's going to win, because what's happening now is the percentage, what's called the contribution to the vote, not the total number of, say, black voters in Georgia voting early, but the contribution to the vote of black voters in Georgia is much lower than it would have to be for Trump to win. For Harris to win. As Sean said yesterday, and I think the day before, the biggest spin of a side that's doing disappointing in early vote is these are just moving people from election day voters to early voters. And clearly, some of the Republicans voting early, having been unshackled. In 2000, Donald Trump said, don't vote early. Now the RNC is saying vote early. Clearly, a very high percentage of the people voting early are not new voters. Now, as everybody knows, guys, my tutorial's almost done, and then you guys can annotate, and then we'll move on. If you get people to vote early, you can mark them down as having voted. If you know from your research they're your voters, you no longer have to worry about getting them to send in their absentee ballot. You no longer have to get them to vote on election day. The bandwidth of turnout can move off of them. So that's a big advantage that Democrats have had. Now Republicans are equalizing that somewhat. That's number one. Number two, the Republicans say this isn't happening accidentally. This is testament to our skill in understanding the electorate and getting people to vote, okay? That's a big deal because the Democrats are counting on a superior get-out-the-vote operation. This suggests maybe their edge is not as great as they believe and many analysts believe. Finally, if we don't see more young people voting in the battleground states or non-white voters voting in these battleground states, by the end of early voting, what I said yesterday will stand. The Democrats haven't proven that they can flip the script on same day voting, and Republicans, even though they've moved some of their voters from same day to early, are going to swamp them on election day. Dan, what would you like to add to that?
I think you said it well. Democrats have a problem. The name of the game is to get more votes than your opponent. And right now, the problem for Democrats is, as you said, Republicans are doing very well. I think John Ralston, said it best this morning, which is people have thought there would be this kind of urban firewall, which has been, in effect for the last couple of elections for Democrats. And right now, what you're seeing is a rural red firewall where rural turnout is exceptionally high. That is what happened in 2016. And so far, Democrats are just not turning out their base voters in these urban centers. And it's the same issues that we've been talking about. And you just said it, Mark, young voters, people of color. It doesn't mean they won't ultimately turn out. It doesn't mean that we won't start doing better, in the next couple of days or over next weekend. But so far, we are not doing well in our quest to get more votes than the other side.
Sean.
I would just say, look, we had one super PAC tell us that an initial contact with a voter is $12. If they have to chase them all the way to election day, it goes up to $100. So every time you vote early, you're basically saving the team about $88, which is why, so it's not just, it's a combination of getting, banking the vote, then being able to go after low propensity new voters. So that's number one. Number two, you can see the Dems. I mean, Barack Obama was very clear yesterday. He did a social media post. He did a bunch of other appearances where he talked about voting early. I'm voting early. I'm doing this. They know they have a problem. And so I think, look, I said this the other day. I'll say it again. Right now, I'd rather be us than them when it comes to going into election day.
Yeah, and I'd rather wake up every morning to Philadelphia turnouts off the charts, Las Vegas turnouts off the charts, and have you on your back feet.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just not the case. And by the way,
if you
notice, the Mets hat is upside down. It's rally cap time on the D side. We've gone there.
There you go. All right. If you look at people who vote early, they're either regular voters or irregular voters, right? Or they're new. And if they're regular voters, the campaigns have data about them in most of the states. And they know Dan voted for Harris. They know that. They banked Dan's vote for Harris. If Dan is an independent who moved into the state last year and has no voting history and voted early, they don't know who that person voted for necessarily. The large number of people who vote early are regular voters, okay? So we're not dealing with the huge universe. I will say again, if this keeps up like this, I'm quite confident that the morning of Election Day, people would look at the numbers and say, there's just no way that Trump's going to lose. But that is a big if, including the fact that some of the Democratic core constituencies are more likely to vote later in early vote, right? The concept of late early vote, not the first 2 days, not the first week, but later in the process, whether it's sending back an absentee ballot or whether it's voting Dropbox or in person early, whatever it is, okay? So I'm not predicting Trump's going to win. I'm not predicting we'll know on Election Day before the vote starts Trump's going to win. I'm saying, as Dan said, and Democrats will agree, this needs to go in a different direction for them than it has, but they say it will. All right.
And Mark, can I just add one thing for Democrats, which is good news?
Yeah.
If you're running for president, the two people you would want on the Dem side running your campaign are David Plouffe and Jen O'Malley Dillon.
Correct.
They know how to do this. They know where their votes are. They know how to micro target down to the city block, and they know how to get people to the polls. So there is confidence that the people doing this do it better than anyone else on our side. And if anyone's going to, squeak this over the line, it's this team.
They're not all stars. They're in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Those two are in the Hall of Fame in American history.
But there's only so much you can do, right? I mean, you can have the best coach in the world. It doesn't mean you're going to hit the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Speaking of which, Kamala Harris did this big NBC interview yesterday. It was long. It covered a lot of familiar topics, a few new ones. These things are no longer driving that much news. You look like the major papers, they barely wrote them up. So now she's got a town hall tonight, CNN. Do the questions matter a lot? Do we know? I don't know if the audience is screened, if they're undecided voters, if they're asking for the questions in advance. But are you guys looking forward to this event tonight, or do you think it has the potential to be another non-event?
Yes, I am. And I'm not looking forward to the questions. I'm looking forward to her answers, because that is where, basically if you look back to last month, she hasn't made news for good answers. She's made news for bad answers. And at
Yeah.
this point,
Or non-answers.
Or non-answers. She needs good events. She needs for us to wake up tomorrow and say, she hit that out of the park. She had a moment. It went viral. She was empathetic. Like, I feel your pain. She can't have non-news events at this point of the election cycle.
So there was several troubling comments that were made last night on the Hallie Jackson interview on the issue of life and stuff like that. But I mean, it's funny to see how little news it drove. Here's what I think is important tonight. This interview tonight has the potential to touch a third rail. She's going to get asked about immigration and border security. I mean, I don't know how she can't, well, then again, who knows? If she screws this up, and this is the problem, is this constant balancing act between trying to appease the folks that they need to go out and early vote, the folks that need to be putting up the signs and manning the phone banks, calling people saying early vote, those are your activists, and going to the other side of getting these folks that we hear on the platform saying, I wish she'd just sound a little more reasonable, etc. Tonight, she's got to figure out which Kamala she is. And when she shows, so I think this is probably the biggest interview for her, because it potentially will deal with an issue that could really rattle the base or turn off a lot of potential Kamala curious voters down the stretch.
Yeah. So of remaining events on the calendar, I think this event is a big one, potentially. Okay. You've got Trump in Madison Square Garden on Sunday. I'm pretty confident that's going to be a big one. So now you've got Harris abortion speech in Texas on Friday, reproductive freedom speech. You've got Trump doing Rogan, taped Friday. We don't know when it will drop. We've got two Bruce Springsteen concerts. Other concerts are going to be announced soon. What do you guys think, besides the town hall tonight? What are tentpole events that could actually affect the race as opposed to just getting a nice news cycle?
I think the Nikki Haley thing, I had Mark Caputo on my show last night. He said they are this close to getting that thing announced. It'll be a Hannity town hall. I think that has the potential to make a lot.
I got to interrupt. I don't understand. Why do a Hannity town hall?
Well,
Mark,
why not do
the Today Show?
I asked the same question you did. I said, why, if you're going to get coverage of this, if you want to get credit, with all due respect, I'm a friend of Sean's. But the goal here is to get to an audience that you're not normally getting. Right?
So what was the answer?
He just said that Hannity personally is involved trying to make it happen. And I think there's a default there. But I agree with you. I said that last night. Why, there's plenty of events on Hannity. And I love Sean to death, but this is
it's nothing against Sean. It just doesn't make any sense.
But you don't even need to do it with a media organization. Do what she with Cheney the other day. Go have a big event with Nikki Haley where she interviews you on stage. All right. I think that one has the potential to drive.
I agree. I agree, except they're ruining it. Dan, what could be a big event?
Yeah, I think those concerts, I mean, we can all laugh at celebrities and the fact that Bruce Springsteen is out there. But what they do in terms of, and Ken Melman's talked about this in the past on various two-way platforms, you will have to give your information to go to those concerts. They will capture your cell phone. They will capture your information. And, if Bruce Springsteen or Taylor Swift, goes to Madison, Wisconsin, and 100,000 young people show up or women show up, and you capture that information and you get half those people to turn out who weren't ordinarily going to turn out, it could be material.
I agree.
Yeah, the thing is, I think a la Hillary, I don't know how true it is. I saw, speaking of disinformation, there was a tweet out yesterday that they paid Lizzo like $2.5 million to appear.
No way. No way.
Well,
you know what? If they did, it's money well spent.
Yeah,
really?
But I don't believe it. I don't
spend $2.5 million?
Her handlers would be fools.
No, I get it. Like, I totally don't think that's true. But even if you did, you're going to spend $2.5 million running TV ads that most people turn off when they come on, or you're going to have somebody that people really like, that they follow her on Twitter. And there are people who, if a celebrity says, like, sign up and vote, it has an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, well.
All right. Going to take your questions now. We had a lot to cover. I hope people found that a good use of our time. We were going to call on Brad, but Brad is gone and disappeared. Let's see if Brad comes back, because I'd had him teed up. Brad, somebody let me know if Brad comes back. Let's go to Rena. Rena, come on in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what the best Bruce Springsteen album is. First, you got to unmute. Rena, you got to unmute. Oh, Rena, unmute.
All right. Am I there?
There you go. You're
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
All right. Where are you? Who are you supporting, and what's the best Springsteen album?
Born to Run. I'm supporting Kamala, and I'm from New York City. To your earlier discussion about Hitler, you have to look at the number of things you hear, and you have to think that all these people are lying, or maybe the common thread is that they're saying it about one person, Trump. I mean, would you think that former Defense Minister Esper lied when he said that Trump wanted to shoot people in the legs that were outside of protesting? I mean, you hear these things over and over. And I'm sorry, just as someone with a critical brain, even if I wasn't embarrassed.
Rena, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know how strongly you feel about this, and you're not alone. There are tens of millions of people who feel, and they think it's just a matter of combining your observed, what does the vice president say? Your lived history of experiencing Donald Trump with the logic of what motivates 10 prominent people to tell the same lie. Okay?
Exactly.
And all I'd ask you to know is that tens of millions of people say they're all lying because they hate Trump, and they're being organized by people like Jeffrey Goldberg to tell the same kind of lie to create a narrative that they think will help them win the election. I'm not taking a side, which I know will make a lot of people angry, but telling you, you live in a country where tens of millions of people do not share your evaluation of Donald Trump,
right,
and do not, and believe that those 10 people could all be telling a version of the same lie, mixed with what Sean says, which is life is confusing and complicated, and Trump may have said something that they misunderstood. So
I guess the only other thing I would push back on is so many of these people gave their life to being in the military. It's not that it happened to be, of other worlds. This is so many of them,
Okay. And all I'd say to that is, Dan, let me just say one more thing about that, because I feel strongly about that. I'm sorry, then Dan. I'm not saying they're lying. I want to be clear. There's a real struggle for me as a human being and as a journalist. Go watch the Vietnam War. Did people in the military lie during the Vietnam War? I don't think I respect, of course, the service of people in the military. People in the military lie. They just do. So I don't think we can say, well, it's true that because they sacrificed for America, that therefore they're not lying. I just don't think you can reach that conclusion. They're human beings. Dan.
Rena, look, I agree with you. I think that when that many people who are that decorated and that honorable have a common thread, it's an issue. And I think according to research that's been put out there, the most effective Harris attack line at this point, as they've gone kind of anti-Trump, is when Republicans speak out in their own words, people sit up and listen. And Harris has gone there. Surrogates are going there. More of these people are speaking out. I am no doubt there's going to be a paid ad pretty soon with some of this stuff. So I agree with you. I respectfully disagree with Mark and Sean. Let the record show for all those who say it never happens. I think it's a big deal. And I think there are people who feel the other way, but I'm happy Harris is going there down the stretch.
And can I make one other point?
Then Sean, go ahead.
And to the extent that we do believe this, how concerning is it that these people, if they're not lying, and they were a pushback on Trump in the first administration, won't be there in the second administration? We will not have people like this. We know that. We're going to have Trump loyalists that are going to be completely around Trump.
I know that's your fear. And if Trump wins, I hope he doesn't do it. There's some reason to believe he won't. Again, I know people will be mad at me for saying that, but I think we should all use whatever influence we have, if he does win, to urge him and the people around him not to do that. He should aspire to high quality people who will not just be toadies carrying out his personal agenda. And we have to hope for that, because he might win, right? He's got a chance to win.
Oh, yeah.
And so we shouldn't just all sit back and say, well, I'm the kind of person who think if Trump wins, because I live in Manhattan, that Trump's going to make Steve Bannon White House chief of staff, and all the obvious examples I could give. Stephen Miller, Secretary of State. Like, let's hope for the better, and let's hope that Trump has a different set of priorities. Sean, you've served. Thank you for your service.
Can I just say one thing though to Rena, because as a Democrat to a Democrat, we have got to respect that 50.1% of this country may have a different opinion. They are aware of these facts. They may either say, I don't believe them, or I have other priorities. And that may be the judgment of the country, whether we
Right.
like it or not. And we
Right.
have got to say the country voted and made their choice. I just,
Mhm.
I have this conversation with my own family daily.
Sure. Sure. But I guess the last thing I would say is those of us that feel this way, we're not deranged.
No, of course.
No, you're
And
not.
the fact that we're often dismissed as having Trump derangement syndrome might be a reason why people are a little shy about coming on. Not that you do it, Mark, but coming on this platform, because there's a way in which I just saw it in the chat. I've just been dismissed as having Trump derangement syndrome. I don't think I do.
Rena, I will say this, and this will be a slight alteration in my posture as I've expressed it. Given Trump's history of lying, given his history of saying intemperate things in public and in private, given the record of the accusers and the consistency of their accounts, you're far from insane. I think you have the stronger logical argument. I think on balance, I think you have the stronger logical argument. It doesn't mean I think it's true because I don't know. I find it so hard to believe either side is not telling the truth. All right, Rena, stay with us because I want you to respond to Sean. Sean has served our country. Sean, thank you. Sean knows Donald Trump really well, and Sean's not afraid of calling other people liars. Sean.
Well, I've now got 5 points. I'll make them quick.
Yeah,
One,
take your time. This is super important. Take your time.
I think, and as they say in Dancing with the Stars during elimination, in no particular order. Trump derangement syndrome. I think there's a difference between not liking Trump. Look, my whole life I've been a Republican operative. There are people on the other side. I don't agree with them, but I don't dismiss them. The difference to me on Trump derangement syndrome is when people think that because it's raining, it's Trump's fault. You know, someone asked me last night, no joke. They said, "Do you think this E. coli thing at McDonald's is because Donald Trump visited?" I was like, "You've got to be kidding." I mean, so there are some people who take their hatred of Trump to a level that is so unreal. And I want you to understand what that is. I'm not suggesting, and I think there's a difference between not liking him and blaming the rain on him. Two, to Dan's point that he just made, I just want to be clear because I think this is important. And I know Dan was trying to. Trump may not even get 50.1, right? And I don't want the left to go, see, he didn't get the popular vote. We don't campaign for the popular vote. We don't spend time in Illinois, even though it's got a ton of electoral votes, because we're not going to win it. And I only say that because I want to further that discussion. Two, to Mark's point, and I know what he was saying, but I don't want his comment to get taken out of context. It is against the Uniform Code of Military Justice for a member of the military to knowingly lie. It is not acceptable. However, people who happen to have served, people lie. And I just there's a distinguishing factor here between people. And it is, while in uniform, it is against the code of uniform, the Uniform Code of Military Justice to lie. So there's a difference between active duty and people who have served in their personal capacity. Two, to your point, or now four, I'm going backwards on the list. These stories are baked in. If you don't like Donald Trump and you see a story that Jeffrey Goldberg wrote, it just adds to why you didn't like it. I don't think there's a lot of people who are reading Jeffrey Goldberg that already don't like Donald Trump or are looking for news. Like, he writes for people who don't like Trump to begin with. And then the last thing I would just say is, I've been in the room countless times to witness something and then read a story about what supposedly happened when four people in the room, where it wasn't remotely what occurred. And for a variety of reasons that occurs. Some people trying to knife other people, some people wanting to whatever. But I'm very skeptical of a lot of stories that occur, having been in rooms with Donald Trump, where you suddenly read something in Politico or the New York Times that literally four of the people say that didn't occur, and yet they still write the story because they've got a source. So I view so many of these things very skeptically. I rest my case.
Can I ask one question of you, Sean? What do you think about the Esper comment about the shooting them in the legs? You think that was said in jest? I mean, where do you put that particular point?
I'm not trying to buck the question or to evade it, but I don't know. I mean, could he have been in a conversation? Could he have been joking around, or could it never have happened? Could it have been, it's funny because if you shot him in the leg, they'd fall down. I don't know.
Okay.
And so, I've said a lot of stupid things, and sometimes trying to be funny and a joke goes awry, sometimes out of ignorance. I wouldn't want to be judged by every comment. And so to sit there and say, oh, there's a rumor that he said this, I'm not going to turn around, whether it's you or Donald Trump, and try to say, this is what they meant, or this is what happened. I wasn't there. You weren't there.
Right.
And I'm not saying someone's lying, but I just also am saying that, like, I've seen enough of these stories blow way out of control or never happen. Unless I was there.
Two other quick points. Sean's right that Jeffrey Goldberg directly is not going to influence people, but CBS, at least last night, led with the Jeffrey Goldberg story, right? Well, so this is us going to get credulous coverage from the dominant media that wants Trump to lose. That's just an asymmetry, okay? And the other thing I'd say is Donald Trump, when he said on Fox, "I want to be a dictator on the first day," was kidding. Was kidding.
I knew that.
It's not. Yeah, I know you do. I know you do. But my point is, that was kidding. The thing about shooting in the leg could have been kidding. I think we need to not assume that every one of these things. The thing in the Jeffrey Goldberg story about paying for the funeral, those of you who've read the story know what I'm talking about. We don't have time to go into it. Like, there's rebuttal to it. And yet people who want to believe that Trump did a horrible thing are going to believe it. Rena, I'm so grateful to you for the posture and attitude you brought to this conversation. I'm really proud of the conversation we had here. We call two-way conversations like no other. I don't think anybody in America has had a conversation about these incredibly difficult issues like we just had. And Rena, you contributed to it mightily. So thank you.
Thank you.
Grateful to you. Deb, come on in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, what's on your mind, and please, your favorite Bruce Springsteen album. Unless you don't have one, which would be unusual. Deb, go ahead. There you go.
Okay, I couldn't do it.
That's all right. You did.
Yeah, I'm not a Bruce Springsteen person. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Fine. What about the other two questions? Where are you and who are you supporting?
Right now, I am in Plattsburgh, New York, but I am a Florida resident, Manatee County. I am supporting, for the first time in my life, a Republican this year in the presidential election.
Did you vote for Hillary in 2016?
Oh, yes.
And Biden in 2020?
Yes.
So take your time and tell us why you're voting for Trump.
Well, it's not simple, but it happened over time from 2020 on, especially around the pandemic. I run a business, and I actually realized yesterday that this was really the turning point in my trajectory here, is when the Biden administration used OSHA to try to push through a rule where companies with over 100 employees would have to force their employees to vaccinate or test like once a week. It probably would have put me out of business. Like, I own a staffing company, and it just would have been impossible for me. And so I just thought, this is insane. So I just realized that was kind of the turning point where I started to question everything, started to listen to, I got outside of my echo chamber and started to listen to other opinions and started to listen to long form conversations with Republicans and realized, wow, they're not crazy. They're not as crazy as I've been told my whole life. So, that's the short story.
Okay. Well, are there things about Donald Trump, for instance, I don't want to presume your positions, but some of the stuff we were just talking about of accusations that he's said favorable things about Hitler, his position on abortion, his position on anything that really gives you pause, do you need to overcome, or you're all in now for Trump?
I'm not all in for Trump. I really don't have a love of Donald Trump, but I've learned to sort of appreciate his quote unquote humor, or the way he operates. And it's pretty obvious to me that he loves to push buttons and he loves to say provocative things. And if you think that Donald Trump is suddenly going to become this statesman, this get in line with the with the establishment, it's never going to happen. And
I'm going to ask you one more question, then turn you over to Dan and Sean, if I can. And then if you've got a question, we'd love to hear it.
I have a couple.
What has Kamala Harris done since she became the presidential nominee de facto that's appealed to you?
That's very hard because I just don't like her.
Why did you like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, but not her?
Well, I was an all-in progressive. I don't know.
But she's a progressive. So how could she not have been
I'm not
anything?
anymore. I've
I mean,
realized.
did you like her convention speech? Have you liked any of her interviews? Have you liked the joy?
No, I probably have Kamala derangement syndrome. Sorry.
Okay. Sean or Dan first. Dan.
I
mean,
just
Or go
wanna
ahead,
ask-
Sean, go ahead. Sean, go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I want to, if I can just dive down on this. When you say you don't like Kamala, is it her policies or her personality that drives that more, or both?
I would say it's both. Her personality grates on me. Always has. From way before she became, I was very disappointed when Joe Biden picked her. I just didn't particularly like her. But the policies, I will say the trans issue, for reasons I'm not going to get into, it really speaks to me. I really feel strongly about that issue, especially as it relates to children. And the way that she just can't answer those questions and some of the policies that she's supported, I can't with her. I just.
Okay. Thank you. No, it was just last night, Hallie Jackson on that NBC interview really started to say, well, it's, the reason men aren't supporting her is because of sexism. And I thought to myself, there's a lot of people who don't like her personality and her policies. It doesn't make it sexist because you don't want to support her.
I hate that argument.
Good. Well, thank you.
What about are you a supporter of Roe versus Wade?
Yes, I was.
So how do you deal with that issue?
It's done. The Democrats had their chance. They used this as a carrot. I mean, so Obama at the beginning of his administration had the House and the Senate. I don't remember this being a huge issue to let's put this into law. Let's make it the law of the land. No, they didn't do it. The beginning of the Biden administration, they had the House and the Senate. They didn't do it. I'm sorry that they had their chance.
Are you voting for Rick Scott for Senate?
I haven't decided on that yet.
Okay, interesting. Dan.
Yeah, first off, just Deb, thanks for coming on. I think you epitomize probably most people, which is it's not black and white. They don't love Trump or hate Trump. It's complicated, and you try to find the best outcome for you and your family. So kudos for speaking up. In totality, when you look at COVID, were you, other than the vaccine mandate, were you more happy with the Biden response and kind of moving the country out of it, or the Trump response in real time?
So in real time during the Trump years, I was fully on board with follow the leaders here. But I absolutely do not agree with the Biden, especially some of the stimulus. I think that's what pushed us into this massive inflation issue that we've been dealing with. I think it was way overboard. We were already in a recovery. It was time to just step back from that, I personally believe. So that was another thing that really bothered me about the Biden administration. And things that I've learned about COVID, one of my big issues right now is free speech and some of the insane things that the government has done to tamp down people like Jay Bhattacharya. And, I would have liked to have had that information before I took a vaccine that I believe now has affected me negatively. So, and I'm not crazy for saying that.
No, I get it. No, I mean, it sounds like you've got several reasons, and
Deb, not because you're a progressive who's a Trump supporter, but because you've been so thoughtful and clear, as Dan suggested. We couldn't be more grateful to you for coming on. Come back when you decide if you're voting for Rick Scott.
Okay.
And thank you for being
I
part
love
of
this platform. I really love it.
Have a check on government. Vote for the D.
Deb, thank you. Yeah.
Real quick, not to go backwards, but Fred in the chat made a really interesting point. We were talking about all of these folks that in the military that said stuff about Trump. There were 51 intel officials that told us that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian information. No one's questioning their truthfulness right now. Some of us on the right are, but I think that it's interesting. We take some people at their word and then we let other people off. That was a huge hoax that had massive outcome and consequences. during the last election, and yet there are 51 people who've never paid a consequence for lying to the American people.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Brad, welcome back in.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that.
Don't take this the wrong way, but you look like a Springsteen fan.
I'm not actually. I'm a Texas
Oh,
guy.
my.
Some more country, I mean, he's fine. I don't, he's all right.
All right. Who's your favorite country artist these days, Brad?
These days, well, I'm more of an old kind of country guy, like Willie Nelson from Texas, So I guess
Do you have
Zach
friends?
Bryan's all right, but it's a little different. So
Do you have friends in low places?
yes, of course.
All right. Brad, you're in Texas. Who are you supporting for president?
I'm supporting Trump. That's not anything new for me. I was actually Johnson 16, Trump 20, so Trump 24. So
all right, tell us what's on your mind, question or comment. And thank you for
well,
joining.
I had this question yesterday, actually, before you even said this stuff about the different stories you've been hearing. But I was curious about the October surprise angle. I might have talked about it when I got cut off for a second, but how much of this stuff is floating around that people know about? It seems like in DC there's open secrets, like Biden losing it seemed like that was pretty obvious. People knew. How much do people know, like, oh, they're worried about this might come out, or oh, this might come out? And I thought of the example kind of I was curious about what Sean, like the Access Hollywood thing, was that known that was coming in 16? Like, you don't have to give me a big backstory, but I wonder if that was really out of the blue, or people know this stuff's coming. Like, how do they react to it?
Great question.
I was literally on the jetway on an American flight to that debate in St. Louis when I got a call that said, you need to look at your phone real quick. And then I was told to get off the plane, and I said, this is the last plane going to St. Louis. And I sat there with no Wi-Fi for about whatever it is, 2 hours to St. Louis. So no, we had no heads up. In fact, initially it was, okay, this is just a rumor. And then it was, no, we have the audio now. Oh, we have the video. So it was, yeah, there's a big difference between rumors, and you hear rumors like, hey, I heard your boss, or I heard this, and I've had that for 30 years. Versus, hey, we have a document that your boss signed. And even when that, I would say 80% of the time, it's we have a document, we have a video, we have a witness, and you have an hour to respond. It's not a slow burn. If they've got the goods, they go.
Interesting.
I'll say on the D side, there are a lot of rumors about Kamala Harris that have been floating around for years. To Sean's point, you don't know, and it's always a question of what information you have, but we'll see.
Yeah. So, Brad, I'm going to risk another day of having people write misleading headlines or texting me and asking me to tell them what I know. So there's two categories, right? There are the ones like Access Hollywood out of the blue. They're ones that happen organically. Most of these things are turtles on a fence post. They are not shoe leather reporters, doggedly digging in a eureka. They find it at the end. They're handed an envelope, the metaphorical envelope. George W. Bush's DWI was not unearthed by, who broke that story? Fox?
Dan Rather.
Fox break it?
Dan
No,
Rather.
No, the DWI.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it was Fox, maybe. Can't remember. But that story was broken by the Gore campaign. And they got it and they handed it to a reporter. Okay. So there are, and again, please don't text and call me and ask me what they are. I'm not going to tell you. It's just not, I don't think it's healthy for me to traffic in these things. There's tons of rumors about Kamala Harris. There are tons of rumors about Donald Trump. The Trump people, I think correctly, because again, you're always looking for the asymmetry. Donald Trump's thing about shooting somebody on Fifth Avenue, the bar is really high because people know about Trump. If you're a new candidate, and this would happen to John Kerry, it's what happened to Mitt Romney, voters have a smaller percentage of data about a smaller absolute amount of data about Kamala Harris. So new information that's negative or controversial takes up a larger percentage of what voters think about her. So a comparable story, let's say drunk driving. If there was a story about Donald Trump drunk driving, that would have less of an impact because people know a lot about Donald Trump than a story about Kamala Harris having been arrested for drunk driving. That's just an asymmetrical reality. It's not a pro-Trump thing in the media by any means. It's just that's the nature of how this works. Both campaigns are on high alert. When I said what I said last night, I heard from a lot of people wanting to know what it was, including the campaigns wanting to know what it is because they have to be on guard for this. The bar for October surprise is really high now because of the nature of this campaign. But everybody's on guard for it, both the known unknown and the unknown unknown. The Jeffrey Goldberg thing, I don't think it's going to, as Sean suggested, I don't think it's going to impact the election very much, if at all. But there's stuff floating out there, and they're braced for it every day. But they can't control it. But I guarantee you, there are pitches occurring today. And the advantage, the disadvantage the Democrats have is what I said, probably more damaging to Harris. The advantage they have is they have more media outlets. If they take something credible to the New York Times, the Washington Post, it'll be printed in a day. That's why so much of the opposition research from Republicans ends up in the Free Beacon and in the New York Post, because they don't have as many places to go with big audiences. Great question. Please don't text me about the rumors. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Brad, let me ask you one more question before you go. Unmute.
Yes, sir.
How'd you find out about two-way?
Somewhere on Twitter/X. I can't remember when. It's been about a month though, but I enjoy the show. Y'all are good to listen to.
All right,
I like the nuts and bolts, like the play-by-play of how these people handle like the day-to-day campaign stuff is interesting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Thanks for coming in. All right, guys, I got a bunch of stuff to promote, so I'm not going to bring in anybody else. Thanks for those who had their hands up. Appreciate it. Please come back tonight at 6, etc. Sean, will you watch the town hall?
Yes.
Yes. Dan, will you watch it?
Absolutely.
What time's it on, guys?
I think it's 7. I have it on my calendar. Hold on. I believe.
Do you get the day book, the Wide World of News, the two-way day book every day? It's in there.
I do. Well, that's why I said I got to look on the calendar. I put it all there right away. Boom.
It's on
Guys, what
YouTube
time?
for your viewing pleasure.
Noah, what time's it on, Noah? Or Paul? Somebody, what time's it on? Anybody know? Nobody knows. I think it's on at 9, but maybe it's on at 8. I don't think it's on.
You
at
are
7.
right, Mark. It is 9.
9 o'clock Eastern time. So Sean and Dan, you guys are like, you ask people, are you going to vote? And then the pollster says, where's your polling place? And you're like, hamina, hamina, hamina. If you want to watch it, it's on at 9 Eastern. All right. Tonight at 5 Eastern, Lauren Leader will be here with a show about Michigan. She's got Joycelyn Benson and other guests, and we'll send her out an email later. But you can watch that on YouTube or here on the two-way platform. Then I'll be on at 6 with a regular episode, full hour tonight. Then tomorrow, there'll be at least 3 episodes of Two Ways. First, this program at 9 a.m. Then Karl Rove, Electoral College Chalk Talk, 11 to 1. Karl is generously giving us 2 hours to go through all 7 battleground states, the demography, the history, the geography, the early vote, etc., etc., etc. I recommend you join us live if you want to ask a question here on the two-way platform, and it'll, of course, be available to watch on YouTube. It'll be a conversation like no other. And then 6 Eastern, in the regular time slot of two-way tonight, a very special two-way tonight. It's all about Pennsylvania. We will have a brand new poll done by Wick Insights, our polling partner of Pennsylvania. We've got some questions that I think you'll like to see. Dave Burrell will be here to walk us through the poll, and Seltzer will be here to talk about the poll. Other great guests, including folks from Pennsylvania, strategists, reporters, politicians. And we'll, of course, take your questions. And the thing I'm looking for perhaps the most is a live focus group, a conversation with some undecided Pennsylvania voters. Great group assembled, but there's still room if you want to get in. If you're listening to me now and you're an undecided Pennsylvania voter, send us an email. It's allaboutpa@gmail.com. We'll be in touch. We'll confirm that you are, in fact, an undecided Pennsylvania voter, and you can be part of that conversation. Guys, are you going to join for that, or are you busy?
I'm gonna do it, man. I put it same thing. I can tell you right now, it's on the calendar. I don't want to show my whole calendar because it shows what time I go to yoga. Joke. Yeah, I've got it down. I'll be there.
Dan?
Absolutely. It's Christmas come early. Absolutely.
All right. You're going to be with me for 5 hours then tomorrow. It's a lot of the day.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all for watching. Again, you can read about two-way in the press release that is online now. We finally announced the company today. And if you're interested in becoming an investor, if you are an experienced investor who wants to be part of helping us grow the company, please be in touch because we're closing our first round right about now. So thank you for that. And I will see you. Lauren will see you at 5, and I will see you at 6 tonight. Have a good day.